I went to school to become an accountant, and I was actually working as a accounts payable clerk, which is like the most soul-crushing job. No offense to all the accounts payable clerks out there, but it's just not for me. So I'm in my accounts payable dungeon, plugging away data entry, and I'm just hating my life. And then all the mortgage people are just having a blast. There's been a lot of hardship, but that hardship seemed to have aligned with my skill set kind of at each step. And it's given me an opportunity to kind of take advantage of like those moments where, when everybody was running away, I could run into the storm. My life was changed by homeownership. When my parents became homeowners, it transformed the way that they engaged with their lives and the confidence that they had. That translated into, me having the life that they wanted to create. So I wouldn't have been able to go to college if not for the fact that they had purchased a home.
Welcome back to the Mortgage Lab podcast, the show where we break down the tools and the strategies and the ideas shaping the future of home financing. Today, I'm excited to sit down with someone who's not just leading the conversation in our industry, but he's actually shaping it. Danny Horanyi is the president of Neo Home Loans, and he has spent his career at the intersection of innovation and leadership and client experience. And we're going to dive into the bigger picture with where mortgage is heading, how mortgage professionals need to adapt, and what consumers need to know about really building wealth through homeownership. Danny, thank you for being here.
Awesome, man.
It's super exciting to have you. You are the perfect person for an opinion on where the landscape is. And so this is super, super well timed, especially with a lot of the consolidation that's going around. And I want to talk about that. We have a lot to get to. We'll see how much we get to cover now. But before we go forward, I want to go backwards, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, man.
So
let's do it.
The running joke around the mortgage industry, and especially my peers, is sometimes mortgage is not something that you choose. It's something that chooses you. Yeah. So for you, when you got into mortgage, was it on purpose or was it accidental?
Very accidental, for sure, yeah.
Okay, good. So the theme continues.
Yeah, 100%. No, I went to school to become an accountant. And I was actually working as a accounts payable clerk, which is like the most soul crushing job. No offense to all the accounts payable clerks out there, but it's just not for me. So I was working at a home builder as an accounts payable clerk. And the home builder shared, office space with the mortgage company. And this is back in the early 2000s. And so I'm in my accounts payable dungeon, plugging away data entry, and I'm just hating my life. And then all the mortgage people are just having a blast. Just absolute blast. And so when I was in the break room, toasting my bagel and, getting my coffee, and I was just interacting with all these people that were just having so much fun, I was like, I want to do what they're doing. And so I started hanging out with them, and within about a couple weeks of that, just being exposed to that, they ended up inviting me to join the team as a loan officer assistant. So
you made the transition from being an accounts payable rep to hanging out with mortgage advisors to then being an assistant. What was the licensing process like for you? How did you have to go and wind down what you were doing in that firm and start at the other one?
So it was actually the same company. So I was working directly for the CFO of this division.
Sure.
And I just went to him and said, hey, they seem to have a need here. I'm really aligned with these guys. I'd love to, switch over. And the branch leader at the time, woman named Lori Peterson, who's still, I can say, one of the most influential people in my life, just incredible leader, incredible mortgage banker. She had a lot of influence over the operation. And so when she said, hey, I would really like this guy to come over, they made the switch pretty easy. And at the time, there was no NMLS. In order to be licensed to talk about interest rates, et cetera, you just had to have a real estate license. So I just went down to the county clerk's office and took the real estate test, which was shockingly easy, relative to the NMLS exam, which is very, very challenging. And so I took the test and I passed, and I was, out taking 1003s on, legal paper, the three pager that I was stapling together and highlighting every day so the clients knew what to fill out. And, that became my life.
And how long did you operate in that role before you moved into mortgage advisor or loan originator?
So I actually moved in this environment at the time. Loan officer assistant was kind of the entry role. And then if you were really good, you graduated to loan processor. So I was a LOA for about 2 years, and then I was a processor for about 3 years. So, and then in about 2007, I started, it was actually a little bit before that. I'm the type of person that I hate being bored. I like just look for things to do. And once I master something, I want to seek the next thing that I can get, awareness of and mastery over the beginning of that.
Sure.
I seek challenges in that way. So once I started getting the whole processor, vibe down pretty well, I started working with the mortgage advisors of the tracks just to ask them what they needed help with. And most of them just needed help pre-approving clients, right?
Sure.
So my background as a loan officer assistant and as a processor allowed me to really be a support to the people who were supporting the tracks of homes. And, Tim, you got to remember, this is like 2005, 6 and into 7. We would release 8 houses in a neighborhood,
right,
and there'd be 100 people that were trying to get these houses, right? So we'd have to pre-approve 100 potential clients to get one of 8 houses.
Yeah.
And so we were just taking 1003s, entering them into this archaic system called, was it TMO, I think, or something like that. It was like literally green letters on a black screen,
sure,
plugging away. You have to use the F keys to move around. Like it's very different today than right. then. But yeah, I was able to just get my, hours and hours of applications and hours of pre-approvals through that kind of crucible of time in those new construction tracks. And there was a point at which it just became necessary. Like the mortgage advisors of the branch, there just weren't enough of them to have enough of the conversations with the people. So they asked me if I would start to do, some of the lower level ones. And then I ended up kind of graduating into kind of a junior LO type position in that time frame at 7 into 8.
Amazing. And then you moved from junior LO until running your own team. How was that transition?
Well, that actually happened over a pretty long period of time. Like I was a very mediocre originator heading into the crash. So, I would maybe doing, helping one family a month, one family every 2 months. It's hard, right?
Sure.
This job is really, really hard. But what changed was during the crash, it was no longer possible to do a stated income loan. Right. And that's where most of the people were engaged in stated income. That's just how they were building their business. They didn't really have a lot of expertise around, reviewing financials, et cetera. But I had 2 advantages in the crash. One is that I was a loan processor previously. So I understood, the mechanics of a loan approval and structuring a deal. And second, I have a degree in finance. And so I was able to read tax returns in a way that my peers and other mortgage advisors weren't able to. Sure. And so I actually, this is crazy, but I was working in a brokerage. So home builder that I worked for ended up getting in trouble during the crash. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of layoffs at this mortgage company. Yep. I ended up working at a brokerage, in San Diego, which is where I lived at the time, or live today, but at the time as well. And the brokerage had maybe 150, mortgage advisors working there. None of them knew how to calculate income. So I literally set up a desk like Sally from Charlie Brown.
You became the income calculation desk.
And they just brought me their files with the tax returns, and I told them what their income was in exchange for a percentage of the commission on the deal. And so then I ended up getting many, many hours. So I had many, many hours interacting with clients, taking their, intake, and then now, calculating income. And that gave me the confidence to think differently about, what my role could be for those families, right? Especially looking around and seeing these people that were enormously successful, but they didn't even have the fundamental knowledge to do the changing job, right? Because overnight, the job changed. It changed from interacting and collecting enough information for that stated income loan to really needing a level of expertise, both in loan guidelines and in, the calculation of, being financially literate enough to collect and then advise, right? I realized I had that skill set, and it gave me the confidence to then go out and try to be a little bit more intentional.
And your education gave you a little bit of an edge over everybody else who's now trying to fundamentally close the gap between what was needed and what's needed now, which is a bit of a theme in your career now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I will tell you this, Tim. I have been extraordinarily fortunate. Like, there's been a lot of hardship, but that hardship seemed to have aligned with my skill set kind of at each step. And it's given me an opportunity to kind of take advantage of like those moments where, when everybody was running away, I could run into the storm, right? Which is just and like I had the confidence and the freedom to do that because I had the skills the knowledge, or at least the starting of the seeds of that told me that was the direction to go when everybody was heading the other way.
Did you have a mentor or somebody guiding you through that time that really shaped your approach, or is that something that's just kind of hardwired within you?
Again, this is just, I'm fortunate in so many ways. So like my parents were fantastic mentors to me in terms of grit and perseverance, hard work, caring for others. The mortgage advisor that I worked with just happened to be the top producer in the entire country for the company. So I come in from this accounts payable clerk
mentorship.
Yeah. I come in from this accounts payable clerk role, meet people in the break room, go to a happy hour. 2 weeks later, I'm working for the number one guy in the country for the company. Right. And so that's just a level of exposure that, I couldn't have scripted that better, right? For myself to be exposed to somebody that was super diligent, super well scripted. I was a very early adopter of what was originally Mortgage Market Guide and then became MBS Highway. And so Barry was a remote mentor to me, right? And I was learning how to talk like him and think like him remotely through, his, daily updates. And then eventually he became a dear friend of mine and an actual mentor versus just one that was remote. So people like that, Dave Savage is another person that, I just leaned very much into the philosophy that they brought towards impacting this industry and being a steward of the mortgage industry and watching them operate. I was attracted and drawn to that. And then I was, able to model some of those things because I could watch them do it with such expertise.
The two people that you mentioned, both Dave Savage and Barry Habib, they both had a drive for really doing mortgage differently than was being done at that time. And they really wanted to focus on the consumer. And I want to move on, but I want to go back to a spot in your career. In the mid-2010s, you were having elite success by every definition. You were serving upwards of 80 families a month, and that is creating a significant, impactful business at scale. And I really want to know at what point you became emotionally aware that you wanted to operate your mortgage practice or just do mortgage in general very differently.
It wasn't that success or those opportunities that led to that awareness. The awareness was already there and it was actually producing that success. And what I will say in total transparency is that I think maybe the right word is codependent.
Okay.
I thrive in partnership. So it was not just me achieving those results. I had business partners, 2 business partners that are, incredible human beings and great operators, great hearts for mortgage. And then we had an enormous team. At one point, we had 34 people total on the team that were helping and serving those families. And so it definitely took a village to execute that many dreams and goals calls and help, have that many people go from, I'm not sure to I can't wait. Like that journey took a lot of people that weren't me, right? Cause, that's a lot of families to help, right? 800 plus a year.
Right. And when you're serving 800 families a year, your charge becomes duplicating your conviction across your team.
Yeah. And the collective vision that my partners and I put forward as to how mortgage can be done differently, how you can run your practice as a business, right? And you can think of yourself as an entrepreneur, even though, under Dodd-Frank, everybody has to, inside of mortgage banking has to be a W-2 employee. You can still function and have an entrepreneurial spirit, right? And that was something that was really critical to the way we operated, and really critical to what I know that I needed to feel, really engaged with my work. My dad's been self-employed his entire life after he left the army. And I just really attracted to that, the lifestyle of creating something, that has your fingerprints on it. Right. But to answer your question though, Tim, more, specifically, I'm going to actually jump a little bit ahead and then back into this. So when I did leave active origination, which happened in 2018, I ended up working for a company called Caliber Home Loans, which is now part of NewRez. And I had a role, called, the director of retail innovation. And one of the things that we did in retail innovation was try to identify the qualities of, that driving brand ambassador, right? Who people that really make an impact on the communities that they're serving, and how they're driven to that success. And so I'm a total nerd. So I looked at the data. And there's this massive stratification, and I was slicing the data in different ways, but the most interesting slice was the income slice. So I looked at our entire population of mortgage advisors and kind of how their income was stratified. And it was not linear, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? There was this run up to a 6-figure income. And then there was this kind of plateau, right? There's like a bunch of people just hung out there. Yeah. And there's this run up to 350. And then there was this run up to 500, little plateaus. And then after 500, it just went parabolic. And that was like the last like 3% or 5%, just had no limit. And this is when I started using the phrase, which you probably have heard me say a million times, there's a lot of currencies. Mm-hmm. And what I realized in that moment was that the people that were in that parabolic area of the graph, sure, they were not trading their time for money. Like something else was happening. Right. And the people that were trading their time for money were actually trading it for identity. They identified as a 6-figure earner or a 350 earner or a $500,000, whatever it is. And once they reached that identity, the currency was satisfied. Satisfied need does not motivate. So they stopped or they slowed, right? Sure. And cruised. The people that are in that parabolic state had something very, very different that was motivating them. And I interviewed those people and asked them what was motivating them. And every one of them had a story about how they perceived homeownership or they perceived lending in a way that was more human-centric to be really important to their journey as a human and really important to their identity. It had nothing to do with the income. The income was incidental to them wanting to help people understand financing, understand homeownership, and become homeowners. And even more deeply, like if you look at the emotion of it, what they were trying to create was safety, security, right? They were trying to engage those people that they were serving at like the basic level of the hierarchy of needs, right? Like physical and emotional safety, shelter, right? That place that can really anchor them into their community because they all had a story of how that happened to them.
And this is a common theme amongst all originators at that parabolic level.
That went into that parabolic level.
You know what's beautiful about that is that when you're serving enough people at scale, any personal gain you get is purely a byproduct of you making an impact in these families. And I think what is incredible is that all of these folks had that same commonality, right? So now that you've done this research project and you've figured these things out, where does that put you on your journey from there?
I was one of those people, right? I had, my life was changed by homeownership. When my parents became homeowners, it transformed the way that they engaged with their lives and the confidence that they had and their ability to, earn wealth passively, to build wealth passively. All of that translated into, me having the life that they wanted to create. So I wouldn't have been able to go to college if not for the fact that they had purchased a home. If they had continued to be renters and continued to save in the way that their, basic financial literacy had taught them to do, which was not a lot, right? Because it's just a very rare kind of knowledge to have in our country, right? There's very few places where you can go, like, unless it's passed down generationally. Like financial literacy is almost like either a generational gift or a generational curse, right? Depending on where the family sits on that spectrum of financial literacy. My parents happen to be on the generational curse side, not having had a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge. And that, set me up potentially for that failure, same in a similar way. But instead, when they became homers, they were able to build wealth passively, which is a very different experience. 64 retirees who are homeowners versus renters are 64 plus times, depending on which year you sample, more wealthy in retirement, right? That's a 6,400% change, right? In impact. And it's because of the intrinsic value of passive wealth building, right? It doesn't require good habits.
Right. It happens almost unbeknownst to you.
Upon you almost, right? Which is wonderful. So I had that experience and it drove me to want to bring that to others. And the ability to do that at scale was the first challenge I had to overcome with my business partners, because they similarly really wanted to make sure that we were operating and delivering super high level of value to as many families as we possibly could, and then helping them on their journey towards financial freedom. That was the seeds of Neo. And then when I was given the opportunity to move into a leadership position at more of a corporate level versus at the street level, the question I asked myself is, what's my purpose, right? What am I trying to accomplish with my life, and what legacy am I trying to create? And it was to help and impact as many families as I possibly could. And that was going to be better done at scale, building infrastructure that would impact the entire country, not just my micro market of San Diego, which is where my team and I had been operating.
Okay, good. So now the seeds have been planted, right? You understand that there's a need that could be satisfied through infrastructure, right? That way we can go and expand beyond just your local market because there's a conviction there. But there's always an inflection point, right? There's an off-ramp and then there's an on-ramp to building something new. So in your case, what was that inflection point for you?
A couple things happen in kind of rapid succession. So, one is that in 2018, after I took on this role, I was also introduced to Ryan Grant, my now business partner.
Sure.
I was in Las Vegas for the Mortgage Mastermind Summit. And our friend and mentor, Tim Brahim, introduced the two of us. We had dinner together, and Tim introduced us and said, he's like, I've been so excited for this meeting. I feel like once the two of you are together, it's going to completely change the industry once you guys have a chance to talk. And
what a foreshadowing comment.
And yeah, that was the way he introduced us as we sat down to eat at dinner. So, Ryan had just started building the art of homeownership, and inside of retail innovation, I had a pretty good handle on the way I imagined we were going to transform how companies interacted with branch leaders, like what that would look like and how that would be structured. And Ryan had really mastered how mortgage advisors should interact with their clients, right? He'd kind of solved that side of the equation. And I had a pretty good line of how we should solve the, broader interaction between company and branch leader, or brand ambassador. And what I realized was that we needed in retail innovation to try to incorporate art of homeownership into what we were doing.
Sure.
And so that effort began, and I could see how those puzzle pieces would fit together. But then 2020 happens and volume just goes through the roof, and the interest in advancing like innovation dropped to zero,
right?
Because everybody was in this frantic kind of trying to get the bucket big enough to catch, all the loans that were falling out of the sky. And there really wasn't time to think about, okay, what happens next after this, right? Mm-hmm. When this ends, like, how are we going to behave? There wasn't that like second, third order thinking happening because it was survival mode. Even though it was abundance, it was like, it was like survival through abundance. And the thinking about the future kind of diminished really significantly. But I realized with Ryan, as we were kind of going through this phase, that the platforms, regardless of who they were, like the modern or the legacy platforms in mortgage banking that existed, were not built to execute the shift in thinking. Like there's just too much legacy success.
Right. None of these platforms were really built in service to the consumer. They were either built in service to the originator, who was looking to just hand out as much debt as possible, or for the operator who had a big enough team that could do that.
Yeah. And look, all of this is okay because all of the mortgage companies that that existed at the time and exist now, everybody's trying to do their best, right? Like I really believe that there's no bad people. Like it's just people looking at the world with different information, making different choices as a result of that. And it's very intuitive if you've had 15, 20 years of success doing something a certain way and carrying forward a certain belief system around how, who owns these relationships and who has responsibility around, the stratification of the income derived from a loan, and like, how we talk about the originator and the realtors, that all of that matters. And it was just became obvious to me. And in conversations with Ryan, it seemed to reinforce that. I started to feel less crazy because he was seeing the world in a really similar way as I was seeing it. And, that we weren't going to be able to build what we were looking to build inside of any existing infrastructure. Like we it just became clear that our established platforms weren't going to accept the kind of change that was going to be required. So then ultimately we said, we have to build this. We have to build the Neo brand. We have to build the Neo story. We need to find as many people that believe what we believe and attract them into that story, so that we can have the impact on the industry that we intend to have.
Pardon the interruption, but I wanted to share something with you. This video is sponsored by the Neo Experience app, and it's our way to help people no matter where they are in their homeownership journey. So whether you already have a home and you're looking to make a move, or whether you're just trying to get on the housing ladder, this app is going to give you a ton of tools to help you reach your housing goals. Now, to access it, you can visit www.homeownersuccessapp.com and sign up there completely free, or you can just check out the link in the description. If you're on your phone already, you can also visit the App Store and download the Neo Experience app, and then just use the activation code Humphrey to make it completely free for you. Thanks so much for watching. Now, back to the video. It's interesting that you mentioned the Art of Homeownership platform, because that's how I was originally introduced to Ryan. And actually, I don't know if I ever told you the story. So I got into mortgage because when I purchased my first home, it was probably the worst experience I had ever had. You and I would consider it a failure on every level. I did not know what my down payment requirement was going to be. I didn't know what my monthly payment requirement was going to be. It was a very interesting approval process. And what's interesting is that I had to learn more about mortgage guidelines than I felt like the person who helped me understood, because I owned an income tax preparation company at the time. And so I knew what my taxes needed to show in order for me to be qualified. And so I knew that based on that experience, if I ever got the chance to impact the mortgage industry, I was going to take it. And so when the prospect of mortgage came up, I was incredibly interested, because working adjacent to the IRS is soul-sucking work. It's just not enjoyable, right? And so I believe that there was going to be more that we could do for consumers, and that I could positively impact the industry there. And so when I finally made the transition into mortgage, I realized that I was at a company with legacy beliefs. They didn't really have any sort of platform to do better than what I had experienced. And so the Art of Homeownership was sort of my way of trying to solve for that and actually offer consumers more than the kind of experience that I got. So, okay. So now you have got the inside company corporate culture relatively dialed. Ryan has the offering outward facing culture solved for. At what point do you come up with a date and say, this is our go live date? We have to do this.
Yeah. So, it was really kind of fall of 2020 is when we said, you know what, we need to look into an alternative here. I told you I'm codependent, right? So I've really never existed outside of a partnership, right? I thrive in partnership. I've self-reflective enough to know that I have a narrow skill set, and I need to find people that are good at the things I'm not good at, I'm not good at more things than I'm good at.
Perhaps we'll call it narrow, but
yeah. When I'm good at something, I try to lean into it really hard. So I get pretty expert, but it leaves a lot of gaps. So, Ryan fills a lot of those gaps. Our partner, Chris Ledley, fills a lot of those gaps. Mark Robertson, Josh Metal, Jeanette Lee, and others that were there around us at the time. We brought that group together, and everyone was really aligned with the idea that, things can and should be done differently. There is a different way, to support and serve families. There's a different way to think, outside of the immediate, ask, that there's always something deeper right then. And even beyond that need, right? Like, I need to purchase this home. Well, why do you need it? Well, I need to be in this school district. Well, why do you need to be in this? Well, has the only program that my special needs child, has in the area. Otherwise, you have to move to another state, et cetera, right? Okay, boom, right? Right now, we know that this goes way beyond home ownership. It goes way beyond wealth building, right? There's a fundamental human need that this serves. But then right behind that, there's the next 50 plus years of that family's life that they have in front of them that is going to depend on this evolving journey that will always require shelter. It's always going to require a home base, right? A foundation on which to build everything else. So we can be there to say, well, what's next? And how do we bridge to that next place, right? Where your family's growing or your kids are going off to college and you got to pay for it, or now they're all out of the house and you need to downsize to that single story that's going to carry you into the next season of your life, right? All of these things we have the ability to set up for those families that we serve on day one. We don't have to wait, right? And was a completely different way of thinking than the way the mortgage industry was approaching clients at the time.
Yes. Some of my favorite dreams and goals calls are the ones that we really don't talk about the mortgage at all. It is about where the client is right now and then where they want to ultimately go and how we can serve them along the way. And the mortgage is a byproduct, realistically. Nobody really wants a mortgage. They want a house. They want shelter. They want to be confident in whatever the next decision is that they make. And what's amazing is that we have so many opportunities because we're the gatekeeper to not only help them with their mortgage, but make introductions to financial planners and CPAs and other financial professionals who can help them along the way so that they're really well prepared, not just now, but long term. And that's really what gets to the heart of why we do this. Okay. So now we've got Neo as an infant just beginning to hum along. What were some of the surprises that you experienced really early on in the creation of this new venture?
Well, I think anybody that's started a business is gonna, will resonate with this. Like there's way more that we did not know than what we did know. Way, way, way more. And it really, took a lot of reflection, and humility to like recognize that, our kind of grand vision of what would happen, right? Coming out of 2020, thinking, we're going to continue to ride this wave, this building and growing wave. Well, instead of growing and building, the wave crashed, right? And we, were, kind of catching a falling sword for the next really 3.5 years before we, kind of achieved a point of stability. The first kind of shock came in, kind of the middle of 22 when it became really clear that, volume was starting to shift and rates were going to shift in a really, way that was, not going to allow us to kind of sustain the growth that we were, expecting to have at that time, right? The entire industry was, in free fall. The number of companies that actually made a profit in 22 was shockingly low. So many consolidated and went out of business. And we started to have to lay people off. And we had been using the languaging of, we were a family. And I had really attached a lot of my identity around being a caretaker, right? And a steward of these people that trusted us. They left stable companies and they jumped on our, kind of hitched their wagon to our train to kind of go off into adventure. And we were failing in many ways. And I was not I hadn't prepared myself for that, mentally. And so when we had to start, letting people go in order to survive into, what became, an even harder 2023, that was extraordinarily difficult. And it required a massive amount of self-reflection and coaching to kind of understand, what our responsibility really is and how we were going to have to navigate as business owners, to, keep as much of the team as we could together. Right. And really I started focusing, and our entire team at that time in the, middle and then end of 22 started focusing really heavily on, being physically stable and sustainable, right? Basically, can we get to a break even $1 profitable on a monthly basis? Because that we can sustain into the future. We need to get away from a mindset of, kind of spending into growth. And that ended up serving us really well into 2023. We continued on those efforts into 2023 and 2024. And we were one of the very, very few, south of 10% of mortgage companies, turned a profit in 2023. And we were one of those. So I was really proud of that. And that came from these hard lessons and the discipline that we developed, from them.
You mentioned 2023 and 2024, and you're exactly right. We learned some really hard lessons through that. And depending on who you believe, numbers wise, we went from somewhere around 400,000 originators to now, at the time of this recording, somewhere around 76,000 originators nationally. And so less than 1 in 4 of us is left. And a lot of us that are really proud that we have leaned into a really high value proposition so that we've been able to serve our clients at a high level. And that's really helped us through these times where there just wasn't as much volume as there has been in the past. But there's so much consolidation going on at the moment. You see Rocket buying Redfin, and you see Compass suing Zillow. And so you see almost a race to the consumer. But even still, now we have these new tools coming about with AI and big data. And so I guess my question becomes, like, how is Neo positioned to really take advantage of those things as we move forward in this?
So let me just make sure I'm going to restate the question back to you just to make sure I'm answering it. So what you're asking is, how do I see Neo being different in terms of leveraging technology while maintaining kind of a human centric intention, right? So high touch.
That's much better and much more concise than I put it.
How is high touch enhanced by high tech versus destroyed by high tech? Which is the fear, right? The fear is technology is going to come in and destroy the human to human interaction.
100%. At least that's the fear that I'm hearing in my circles.
So I'm going to answer this from a couple of different perspectives, because I think that AI and technology can be really, really scary to there's many constituents that get fearful of technology and fearful of AI and fearful of automation in the mortgage industry in particular. So I'm going to answer your first question first, and then I'm going to talk about some of those other groups. So, one of the things I did, when I was building and growing my own team, was try to identify how I was going to, safely delegate tasks without it being, without jumping in to the baton race and chasing down my runners and tackling them and taking the baton back. Sure. Cause I'm a control freak. Right. I have a very specific vision around how the experience should be created. And I have a diluted belief that I can do it all, right? I oversubscribe myself. I overcommit myself. And, I'm not afraid to go chase down the runners and try to run with the baton, right? Or I wasn't in the past. So I said, okay, I can't grow if I behave this way. I'm my biggest obstacle, my biggest challenge in my business. So I have to behave differently. So I took all the tasks that we did, and I said, okay, I need to find the ones I can safely delegate and not worry about. So I put them in a Punnett square, which is, if you're familiar with this, you make 4 boxes, and then you put 2 descriptors on the left and then 2 descriptors on the top, and you see how they relate to each other. So on the left, I said proactive and reactive. And then on the top, I said tactical and emotional. So the top left box is tactical, proactive tasks. And I put all the stuff in there. Sure. And then there's tactical, emotional tasks. Or no, tactical, reactive. And then there's emotional, proactive, emotional, reactive. And what I realized is I could delegate 100% of the proactive, tactical items to another person, and I would not worry about them at all. But then what I also realized is that the reactive emotional items, that's, appraisal came in low, or the home inspection came in and now the client needs to come back and talk through what that means for them, or, any number of things throughout, even my own experience, right? I'm emotional experience, right? And I'm kind of deviating a little bit, but this is just a really quick story. In 2017, I bought my current home. That afternoon, the afternoon that I got into contract on that house, I had a lunch and learn with a bunch of realtors in the area. And the title of that lunch and learn was, "Are We in a Bubble?" And so I talked for 45 minutes and I gave all of the reasons why we were not in a bubble, like supply demand housing, household formation, all this other stuff. And I got into contract that evening and I went to my wife and I said, what if we're in a bubble? Because I was on the other side of the trade now, right? And I'm looking at this and going like, oh my gosh, I'm now having to put my money where my mouth is. And I was scared, right? So there's so many components of the journey towards homeownership that are charged with emotion. There's so, like, we call it the American dream, right? Being a homeowner is an American dream, right? I attach so much identity to my home, where I live, how I live, inviting friends and family over. It is an emotionally charged experience.
100%.
And I believe there's no way to disconnect or detach that. However, there are some aspects of homeownership that are more emotional than others. And I call those the moments that matter. The points throughout that journey of homeownership that are the most critical. And our mission is to allow technology to facilitate every part of the process that is not a moment that matters, so that our mortgage advisors, our loan specialists, everyone, our client success managers who assist the families, post getting their keys. If every single one of those people in the journey can be focused only on the moments that matter, only on the human connection, not only do I think we're going to create a better outcome, right? Because we can be there and have a more kind of bespoke experience with that family, hearing what their needs are and responding specifically to those needs. We're going to enjoy what we do more, right? Because all of the minutia and the like grindy type work is going to be handled by the machine. Right. And the other thing that happens here, and this is kind of going to that second constituency that I was referring to, that's really afraid, right? Are partners that help facilitate, that really live usually in those, proactive tactical tasks, right? Let's say I'm a person that lives in that space. I'm a proactive tactical person and I'm pushing buttons all day long. I look at AI and automation and go, oh my gosh, like at someday all these buttons are going to get pushed.
Right. Like they're going to get pushed on my behalf.
By an AI. Yeah. On my behalf, right? This takes my job. But what I know for sure is that there is a massive difference between somebody that's pushing buttons, that's proactive, tactical, and somebody that's truly proactive in the way they organize their time, they organize their day. The real A players. Right. The real A players are ready to take the reactive tactical work. They're ready in a worst case scenario to take the reactive emotional work, and they do. So those individuals, right, that step up and they show that they're not just there to push buttons, but they're there to serve that family and create an impact. And they see themselves as a lead generator. They see themselves as a trust builder, not just as a button pusher. Technology is going to take those individuals who are helping 25 families, a month in whatever the, manufacturing role that they're in, to 100 to 150. Still working 8-hour days. We're not talking about doubling, the amount of hours they're working or transforming or changing their work-life balance. So not only are we going to be able to free up people like you, Tim, to be more connected and be more intentional with your clients, everyone in the entire process who meets that standard of being an A player that's in service to that experience is going to find that they now have more job security. They have a more fulfilling day because they're focused on those aspects of the work that truly makes an impact.
Right. And then they get to show up more in the moments that matter, and they can do so more authentically at scale.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fantastic shift when people can just be involved in the moments that matter. I want to move to the state of the industry a little bit, and it doesn't appear that everybody's rowing in the same direction. And it feels like there is a contingent that is going toward like the fully automated mortgage where no human is really involved in the process. And then on the other hand, you've got folks who are heavily advice and guidance geared, and they still would like to and need to be involved, especially for some of the loans that are maybe a bit trickier and don't fall within like standard mortgage guidelines, right? And so the question becomes like, what does the modern mortgage advisor of the future look like?
I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And I'm actually going to come back to kind of this hypothesis, as well around like a fully automated experience, and why I think that that's a false choice, event. But the modern today and into the future mortgage advisor, they need to focus their time and attention around the activities that, are building trust at scale, and be confident enough in the systems, right? Either through mastery of them, deep understanding of them, or through co-creating them, right? Like we're doing at Neo, right? There's, yours and our other partners are, our other branch leaders and mortgage advisors have their fingerprints all over what we're building because they're pointing us in the direction of what's needed to create that next enhancement to the experience. So mastering technology, mastering systems and processes is a must. The other thing that we're going to need that is different than what we have seen in the past is organizational discipline. And this is different. And I will tell you, I have been converted because if you like showed this interview to me in 2015 and said, "Hey, Danny, future you is going to say that every business can't have its own bespoke custom CRM system and leverage all of these different middleware technologies and, be just seeking all of the bolt-on things that allow you to feel like an individualized, you're manifesting your kind of individual, approach to mortgage." That was my religion before, right? I believed that, there was a best way and I was going to find it. And if somebody else had a different way that they thought was best, that's good for them. But there's no way that my way isn't the best way. And I don't actually care if it gets facilitated by the organization, et cetera. Now that's not sustainable, right? A good friend of mine was describing the old way of iterating a mortgage company as the, I'm going to mess this up, but I think it's something along the lines of the infinity cake, right? Where like you're baking a cake and you invite all your friends over and you just tell them to bring an ingredient, like bring an ingredient with you. And we're just going to, whatever you think should be in this cake, we're going to go ahead and put it in the cake. Right. And so you come over and, maybe you say, well, I like a little dash of vanilla, and then somebody else wants pineapples. And then this other guy loves cayenne pepper in his cakes. Right. And so we just throw it all in there. Eventually what we end up with is a cake that's way too expensive to cook, or we have to charge more than anybody would ever want to pay to eat this cake. And it would be disgusting, right? Like,
right. It's not a good product.
It's not a good product in the end. Right. So what I believe mortgage companies will be required to do, ours included, is establish what we call the Neo way in order to create the Neo experience. And that's going to require discipline and alignment, but also a feedback loop of listening, because it can't just be Danny's way or Ryan's way or Jeanette's way, right? It has to be our collective co-created way that we believe we can all align around. And then we test and learn how it can change. So that organizational discipline is going to be a massive differentiator in the future of kind of the modern mortgage practice.
I completely agree with you. One of the things that I've found most rewarding about being at Neo is just the spirit of collaboration. It is unbelievable how willing people are to share their thoughts, to help us all continue to row in the same direction. And what's interesting is that while we all have the same kind of process that we go through, it's not devoid of personality. You can put your own spin on it and you can show up authentically for your clients, but the outcome needs to be the same. It needs to be repeatable. It needs to be measurable, and it needs to make sure that we're all in service to our clients to the absolute best of our ability. And what's cool is that it doesn't matter if it's somebody, like, we're not geographically limited at Neo, right? So our divisions are spread across the country. And so, when we're having these conversations, it's clear that the process is working, because it's not like we're hanging out at happy hour afterwards in the same restaurant having these conversations. It's a cultural thing, and the spirit of collaboration is just like nothing I have ever seen before.
Yeah. It's one of the things I'm most proud of is the level of openness, right, and generosity of the community at Neo. It's absolutely incredible. It's mind blowing to me actually to see how fast people are iterating through. And I think what that's created is this feedback loop where people have recognized like the market's moving so fast. Like I could create my thing that gives me a little edge in my small market that I'm in service to, or I can open up in an open source way what I'm doing to others. Yes, they'll probably want to use it in their market, but at the same time, as they do, the idea gets refined and sharpened and then comes back to me, even better than what I started it with. So,
and faster because you have so many people iterating around the same idea.
I want to go back to what you said though about the fully automated experience and then the kind of advisor facilitated experience. So, I'm obviously hugely biased in this because I'm all in invested in the mortgage facilitated experience. So the advisor facilitated experience supported by technology, right? Facilitated by AI, enhanced by AI. Right. But there are still clients, to your point, that are choosing or we believe that they will choose an automated only experience. Certainly. So I think, why, right? What do they actually want? What's the emotion? If we think about this as from like an emotionally centered perspective, like what's the emotion that's driving that choice versus the choice of working with another person? Okay. All things being equal, right? If we can bring the price to be exactly the same, would somebody sometimes still choose the fully automated experience? And the answer is yes, they probably would. So the answer to that I believe is at least from my perspective accurate, is that they're afraid. They're afraid that there's an information asymmetry, that the human advisor has more information than them about what the need is, and that they don't have their best intentions at heart. And so they will take advantage of that gap of information and they will then put them in something that doesn't serve them and their family correctly. And unfortunately, as an industry, we've reinforced that. And there's been plenty of times, very loud examples, like in, starting back with the crash, even prior to the crash, right? And
this is recent history.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And everybody has a uncle or a parent or like somebody in their life or sphere that was really, really impacted by what today we recognize as mortgage fraud. Right. And these products are illegal, right? That were delivered to these families. Right. So I believe that there's that space of mistrust that we've created. But as we refine and continue to consolidate, right, we have the automated only, and then we have the Neos of the world. And I sincerely hope, and there are others out there there are other companies that believe what Neo believes. There are, they don't wear the exact same jersey, but we're on the same side in the battle, against, lack of financial literacy, and against, people making choices that aren't in service to their long-term goals. There are other companies like us that are out there, and there will be more. And the reason I think that's important and why I believe there will be more is that that's the only space that will exist. Is either people will be afraid to interact with the person because they can't confidently believe they're going to have their best interest at heart and they'll go automated only, or they will believe that they have a true fiduciary that's truly going to show up for them, not just before and during that home purchase, but long after, all the way through their journey towards financial freedom. Once that distinction is known and that gap of fear and that mistrust of us as an industry can be destroyed through our intention and through our continuously making and keeping promises, the attraction to that automated only experience is going to be much lower.
Do you think the perception of the mortgage industry changes over the next 5 to 10 years or so?
I hope so. I really hope so. Yeah. I think it depends a lot on us, right? And how we show up and what we do to create that change, right? It's not going to happen on its own.
What do you wish that our clients and our realtor partners in this business really understood about Neo?
I think this is all tied together, right? This concept of impact. The realtors that I want to see us, right, are the ones that are running their business like a business, right? They intend to be part of their community, and they intend to anchor people into that community through home ownership and really be in service to them. So I want them to see us as business partners, right? Not just a vendor, but somebody that can be part of that client journey and a major part of that client journey. I want our clients to see us and not see us as a path to debt or a path to financing or a path to a mortgage payment, but as a true thought partner into how and why they should be structuring their financial view and their financial identity around like a changed perspective. Right. So when we have somebody that comes to us, they should never worry that they're going to get sold something that doesn't meet their needs. They should never worry that they're going to leave confused. Right. Because our entire purpose for existing is to help them understand what the right choice is for their family's current step, and at least as far down the path beyond that as we can see together.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And it's really the crux of our entire ethos, right? I have to say, I have never been prouder to be a part of something that is currently being built. And while building is hard in every sense of the word, right? The end result and the future state of this is going to be something that is truly incredible and that is going to better serve the consumer where they're at. And I'm super excited about that. Last thing for you. Would you like to play a quick game of this or that?
Go. Let's do it.
Oh, good. Well, I thought I might be able to surprise you with something, so this will be fun. The rules are very simple. You got to pick this or that. You can't choose both, and it's rapid fire style. So, are you ready?
Let's do this.
Here we go. Big city or small town?
Big city.
Morning or evening?
Evening.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Movies or TV shows?
TV shows.
Thunderstorm or snowstorm?
Thunderstorm.
Breakfast food or dinner food?
Breakfast food.
Tacos or sushi?
Sushi.
Pickleball or golf?
Golf.
What was the best book you read last year?
Best book I read last year. Oh man. I'm trying to think of I read a decent number of books, but probably the most important book I read last year is I reread The Four Agreements. I actually read it every year. It's incredibly important, like for me to anchor back into the Four Agreements. It's like all four of them are hard for me, except for Do Your Best. I do lean into that one pretty hard, but yeah, it's just a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it.
I have not read that one, so I'll add that to my list and I'll give it a go. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Danny. Frankly, thank you for being so generous with your time. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of years. And frankly, it's a pleasure to partner with you and with Neo in changing the mortgage industry. I don't know if it's ever truthfully looked brighter than it is right now. So I'm super proud of the work we're doing, and it is completely necessary. So thank you again for being here.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed today's episode, would you just consider subscribing? We'd love to make sure that we can continue to bring you content about real estate and finance and inside information and strategies to help make you successful. And frankly, this is some of the best work we do, bringing you information from inside the industry so that you can see the work that we're doing behind the scenes in service to you. So if we can ever be of assistance, please feel free to reach out. But thanks for tuning in wherever you tuned in, however you tuned in, whether you watched or listened. We love that you're here either way. So thanks for joining us. And as always, please stay curious.